Good evening, wanderers. Tonight, Altaire's wandering apothecary rests in a peculiar corner of Ashbourne, where the fog hangs thick and trees loom like ancient watchmen. There's an odd magic in the air, a hush as though the world is waiting for something unseen to step forward. This morning, I received a letter from my brother Ridley. He's a fortune teller in Blackbriar Grove, a town where shadows are longer and mysteries seem to gather. His letters are rare but always bring a touch of whimsy and warning. Ridley wrote of strange fortunes he's seen in the cards, a dark road appearing for those who tread where they shouldn't, and a whisper of something old stirring in the forests. Knowing Ridley, he'd chuckle over tea and say it's probably nothing, but his words lingered in my mind as I opened the apothecary's door today, gazing out into the quiet greyness. Ridley has a way with mysteries, and although our paths diverged years ago, his knack for reading the unknown has always left me wondering about the strange connections that run between us. But more of that another time, perhaps. Tonight's story has shadows of its own. Inside, the apothecary had a glow that felt almost defiant against the encroaching fog. As I set about my work, the familiar rhythm of potion making felt like an anchor, something warm to ward off the mist outside. There's a certain peace to the work, the quiet hum of mixing elixirs, the gentle clink of glass jars, and the scent of herbs hanging thick in the air. Tonight I mixed an elixir of willow bark, elderberry, and nightshade pollen, perfect for calming restless minds and quieting anxious dreams. The brew turned a deep indigo as I stirred, steam curling lazily from the cauldron, filling the air with a scent of damp earth and fallen leaves. Whimsy, curled beside the counter, watched with their half-lidded gaze, their tail flicking now and then in quiet approval. The potions on the shelves seemed to hum with an unspoken energy tonight, each one a tiny piece of the world, captured and bottled. There was the charm for peaceful sleep, nestled beside a potion that banishes sorrowful dreams, and next to that a vial of stardust, faintly glowing, rumoured to help travellers find their way back from strange paths. There's a peculiar joy in this, mixing ingredients that have their own stories, each one chosen with care. I reached for rosemary, then a bit of mountain ash for its protective qualities, and finally a pinch of starwort, grounding myself in these familiar rituals. Outside, the fog grew thicker, but within the apothecary I felt as though I could keep the shadows at bay, if only for a little while. Just as I bottled the elixir, a soft knock echoed from the door. When I opened it, Penelope, a local gatherer, stood shivering on the threshold. Her usual bright eyes were wide and uncertain as she clutched a basket of herbs. She whispered of shadows on the hallowed path, dark shapes that moved through the mist, slipping just beyond her sight. Her words lingered even after she left, the silence settling thickly around us once more. Whimsy and I stood in the doorway, watching as the fog crept along the cobblestones. There's a pull in the mist tonight, as if something beyond the ordinary waits just past the edge of sight. We locked up the apothecary and stepped into the swirling greyness, letting our feet follow the fog-covered path to wherever it might lead. The hallowed path, as the townsfolk call it, is a road where memory and mist intertwine, where the lost and forgotten linger. As we walked, the fog seemed to swallow the world around us, the trees pressing close, their branches reaching like skeletal hands. Whimsy padded quietly beside me, their eyes darting to every shifting shadow, every crackle of leaves underfoot. Even they seemed subdued, as though they too could feel the watchful presence of this place. The path twisted, the trees arching overhead in a dark canopy that blocked out even the faintest starlight. My lantern cast a wavering glow that barely pierced the mist, shadows dancing along the edges, blurring the line between real and imagined. I felt Ridley's words echo faintly in my mind, a dark road and something stirring in the forest. A warning, perhaps, though he always says that the cards only reveal possibilities. I stopped, glancing down at Whimsy, who was staring fixedly at a shape in the mist, a figure just beyond the reach of my lantern. She was barely visible, a wisp of a form cloaked in shadows, more memory than flesh. She moved slowly, her shape shifting as if she were made of smoke, her voice soft and ancient, carried to me on the fog. She spoke of paths that lead to forgotten places, echoes of memories left behind. I felt her words sink into me, a chill running down my spine. The path seemed to throb with an old magic, one that made me feel as though I was treading in someone else's footsteps, following a story not my own. But just as the pull of her presence drew me closer, Whimsy let out a low growl, their stance protective as they stepped between me and the figure. Their fur bristled, and in that moment I remembered myself, remembered the apothecary and the familiar warmth of its shelves. The figure dissolved into the mist, leaving only a faint chill behind, a memory that clung to the air long after she was gone. I exhaled, feeling the weight of her presence fade, leaving only the quiet press of the fog. Whimsy glanced up at me, their usual calm gaze returning, as though they too knew we'd avoided something best left unseen. We turned back, and each step felt lighter as we left the hallowed path behind. The apothecary's windows glowed warmly in the distance, a welcome sight against the greyness of the night. Inside, the air was rich with the lingering scent of stardust and nightshade, familiar and grounding. I set down the lantern and poured a steaming cup of valerian tea, its warmth a small comfort against the chill that had settled over me. Whimsy curled beside me as I took a seat at the counter, their tail wrapping around their paws as they settled into a quiet watchfulness. I reached for another bottle, a jar of crushed yarrow leaves, a reliable herb for protection, perfect for a charm to ward off strange paths. I gathered a pinch of rosemary and a sprig of mountain ash, adding each to the vial with a small murmured blessing. Potion making has a way of quieting the mind, grounding us in the familiar, even on the strangest of nights. The shelves around me felt like old friends, the bottles and vials humming with unspoken magic. I glanced at the stardust again, the faint glow reminding me of Ridley's words, the things we see in the dark and the paths we tread when no one is looking. As the night deepened, I found myself comforted by the gentle rhythm of the apothecary, the quiet clink of glass and the soft glow of the stardust. I could almost hear Ridley's voice, teasingly scolding me for wandering too close to the unknown, even as he too follows shadows in his work. Outside, the fog had lifted, and the stars shone down like scattered embers against the dark sky. I stepped out to lock the door, feeling the weight of the hallowed path still lingering somewhere in the distance, waiting for another wanderer to step too far into its grasp. But tonight, we were safe. And to you, dear listeners, I leave you with this. Should you ever find yourself on a road that wasn't there before, remember the light of familiar things, and always, always listen to the quiet warnings in the night.